Welcome back to the Pyro Rookie Dossier. Today we're doing the 2017 rookie running backs, and it's a good time. If you missed them, so far we've already done the rookie quarterback video, and we also did the rookie tight end video. As usual, I've got the Heartbeat is with me. I've also got Waz with me. I'm D-Rex. We are Pyromaniac.com, and today we're going to give you some fantasy goo video style. We're going to be trying to do some more videos heading into this season. Should be exciting. And, you know, it is rookie, and rookie some more when we're on these shows. We got a good one today with these rookie running backs, and I'm sure we'll probably go a little long. So sit back, take your socks off, and learn some shite. What's going on, fellas?
Yeah, just enjoying a sunny weekend out in California. Ready to talk some fantasy with you guys.
Awesome. How you doing, Waz? Waz, you were a little under the weather yesterday. Hope you're feeling a little better today. It hasn't been sunny in Chicago for us, but not a terrible day today.
No, not too bad. I mean, we're in 60s right now. I think what made me feel a little bit better was the fact that I can kind of throw some shade on Dalvin Cook today.
Nice. Yeah, I'm gonna probably join you in that one and looking at a little bit of stuff there. I'm not so high on him, but let's just get right into it. Feel free to dive this into anything you want and talk about the guys. You know, there's a lot of we know that in fantasy football these days, these rookies are doing a lot of good action. You saw it last year with Jordan Howard and obviously Ezekiel Elliott, both guys that led the league 1 and 2 in rushing. So it's a position that can have immediate impact. So, and I think there was just a lot of great situations and a lot of great players and a lot of first rounders that, and even a lot of fourth rounders that I think have a fantasy opportunity. So we'll start from the top with Leonard Fournette, first round, 4th pick overall. So that's 2 years in a row that there's been a running back that's gone in the 4 slot, which is great because I think the previous 2 seasons there were 0 running backs that even went in the first round. So Fournette, I'll let one of you guys kind of take it away. Obviously a hyper stud out of LSU. What do you foresee with this beast now in the Jacksonville Jaguars?
I mean, there's a lot of things to like and there's a lot of things to not like. The fact that he did go to the Jaguars. Fournette's in that class of elite running backs. Runner's the best running back in the class, no doubt about it. The fact that he was the first running back off the board in the NFL draft, I think is you know, absolutely he's absolutely worth that pick. He's amazing with the ball in his hands. He looks like he toys with defenders. He's got like this, you know, this mold of like a Le'Veon Bell, a little bit of a Steven Jackson and Jonathan Stewart all in his game. If you were to, you know, kind of blend all the best features of those running backs together, you're going to get something really close to a Leonard Fournette. He steps on the gas pedal, fly by defenders, lowers his shoulder, just runs through them. He's strong. He's balanced. A basic tackle typically won't take him down. It's like trying to tackle a tank, I think I read somewhere, which made that's exactly what I saw when I was watching a lot of this film. You know, the thing about Jacksonville, you got Doug Marrone there and Tom Coughlin is also in there, and they're both old school running back kind of coaches. The thing is, you know, in Doug Marrone's 2 years as a head coach, the tandem of Fred Jackson and C.J. Spiller ran through the league, and they did really, really well. In the 2014, Marrone's Bills were 8th worst in rushing yards per game, though. But Fred Jackson, Anthony Dixon combined, you know, he's always doing this tandem as well. And Tom Coughlin did something very similar. He's always had a very dominant rushing attack. And in the 6 seasons of the Giants, 2005 to 2011, his rushing offense ranked 6th, 7th, 4th, 1st, 20th, 7th, and 32nd. The 32nd rank was in 2011, but that was their Super Bowl season. So he's always had a very effective running game. Both of them, though, like to employ those running back by committees. So, you know, with Marrone, it was Jackson and Spiller, and then Jackson and Dixon. Coughlin had like Tiki Barber until it was like Brandon Jacobs and Ahmad Bradshaw. So there's a good chance, you know, everyone wants to write off like Chris Ivory and say like TJ Yeldon's kind of mostly done with Fournette here. But these, you know, Marrone and having Coughlin around, they're going to want to kind of move the ball around and share the load a little bit. I don't want them to. But Fournette, the fact that he isn't a very good receiver or not a very effective receiver, he doesn't have to be, especially with someone like TJ Yeldon there. We may only see Fournette for like 2 downs, and it's a little worrisome. I'm buying just based on the kind of athlete that he is, but there's a lot of things that kind of hate on, and I'll bring up a little bit later the offensive line woes of the Jaguars. I'm pretty sure Heartbeat's going to do that as well.
Yeah, I mean, Fournette is a polarizing player. I watched a lot of his games just because they're on. LSU is a big program, and I found myself falling in love with this guy. Like, he is just a beast. You see him running through 3 tacklers, running over people in the flat, just like taking these short passes to the house. He loves those little house pitches where they go kind of inside the tackle, and he is just so difficult to bring down. And his player comps were unreal. I mean, we always overrate rookies before they come in, player comps, but he got Adrian Peterson from Walter Football. He got Todd Gurley from PFF, and the NFL Combine gave him Bo Jackson. So, I mean, like, his upside, the roof is the ceiling, as MJ said. But then you look at him, and he missed so many games for that lingering injury on his ankle. He's one of those players where when he's in, you can kind of put him down for 100 yards and maybe a touchdown. But he's not going to be playing every game. You see, he's kind of like the Jordan Reed injury type where you're hoping to get 12, 13 games a season out of him. And it's like, is that really worth the third round capital that you're going to spend on him? I don't know. In my opinion, it is, because I prefer those injured players, because when they're in, they're producing. When they're out, they're out and you can slide someone in for them. But, I mean, he's going to be one of those players that you draft and you're going to be tugging your hair out all season because you never know if he's going to be playing.
Quick question. Do you think as the time moves forward and we're heading into the drafts in August and early September, do you think that his ADP is going to be going up a bit at the running back position, or do you think he's going to kind of stay where he is right now and this will be for you, Heartbeat, and then I'd like to hear what you have to say about it, Waz. I mean, I'm thinking that just if he can stay healthy in the preseason, I'm thinking his ADP is going to keep rising a bit. His stock is going to keep going up. Just the unknown, the correlation of the Ezekiel Elliott and all, like you said, his player comps are just ridiculous. And you're going to be sitting there and you're going to be like, the upside of that player or one of these other guys, I'm going to roll the dice on him. What do you think, Heartbeat? Where do you think his ADP will lie when people are actually drafting their teams in redrafts and whatever for the upcoming season? Not you MFL 10 animals.
Yeah, I think he's going to have a very similar offseason to Ezekiel Elliott last year. All the analysts were saying, no, you can't take this rookie in the first round. You can't take him. He comes out and he has a great season. So that's going to skyrocket him. I think he's going around the 3rd round right now. So that's exactly where Zeke was going last year. I think by the time August comes, I think he'll be going ahead of guys like Lamar Miller, those workhorse, or not really workhorse backs, but the feature back who he now has to fight off Deion Freeman in his backfield. So Ryan Fournette could get his 300 carries. And one thing is he was very injured last year, but in 2015 he was the first rated player from PFF in the last 3 seasons. So that includes Todd Gurley, that includes Melvin Gordon, that includes Ezekiel, Jordan Howard. So he ranked higher than them in 2015. And he's so good that people are going to bite on him. They're going to bite early. And if you're not willing to give an early second, late first, then you're not going to have much of Leonard Fournette on your team.
Where do you think, Waz?
No, I think that, that 3rd round valuation is correct. He is going right now. He's actually going before Lamar Miller as it is right now. He's going in between him and Todd Gurley. Todd Gurley's going off a little bit before him. I think it's going to come to the point, though, where a lot of people are going to value him similarly to how they did Ezekiel Elliott last year. The thing is, we have to consider, Chris Ivory still there and TJ Yeldon, and the fact that Fournette doesn't have the receiving capabilities in order to make himself more valuable. He's not going to get that Ezekiel Elliott treatment in his first year. He doesn't have that all-pro offensive line. The Jaguars were 21st in yards per carry last season, 31st in rushing touchdowns. They have a bad offensive line. They have a bad quarterback. The defense overplays the run just because of Blake Bortles and how not good of a quarterback he is. And we saw a lot of that last year. And we saw that running game be non-existent because they're going to continue to overplay the run and let Blake Bortles be Blake Bortles. They signed Earl Watford from Arizona. He was a lower level free agent there. They dumped Beachum and Luke Jokel, added Cam Robinson in the draft. So it's not like they just kind of fabricated this super strong offensive line. It's still a glaring hole. It's still going to be a problem. And I think a lot of people are going to be paying too high on Leonard Fournette in season-long leagues this year, especially if they pay him at a running back 10, running back 11, running back 12 price.
I agree with that. I'm definitely – I think he's going to be too rich for my blood. You know, there's a big difference. When you got Elliott going to the Dallas Cowboys and behind that just unbelievable offensive line, I know me and a number of us, I can't speak for you guys, I knew he was going to have a beast of a season. Me and Stags were on that guy all off season. He was a first rounder the minute he got drafted by that team, in my opinion. And I just don't see that until I see it and I can see the guy being healthy on the Jaguars. I can't mortgage my season on that guy in the first round. So if he falls and he's the nicest guy there and the best value there in the third round, so be it. But I kind of agree with you, Heartbeat. If I did have hair, I'd be pulling it out all season. So maybe I'll grow a beard and I'll be pulling out my beard or something like that. But you guys want to add anything else on Mr. Fournette here?
Yeah, actually, I want to do the big reason why he's probably not going to return a good enough value is you're so reliant. He needs like so many touchdowns in order to make up for his lack of receiving in the offense. So, and we can't really expect the Jaguars to, push in for 8 to 10 touchdowns, a safe 8 to 10 rushing touchdowns a season. We want to see it, but it's a lot to kind of bank on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I agree.
One thing I'll say is I want to point to the Tennessee Titans from last year. They started last year as the 25th ranked offensive line, and they ended the year as the first. So the Jacksonville Jaguars have a little bit better of an offensive line than the 25th last year. And I could see Leonard Fournette having that impact because, the Titans, they brought in DeMarco Murray, they brought in Derrick Henry, the rookie, and they just saw their offensive line value skyrocket. So he could have a similar effect, not to that level, like not jumping up 21 spots, but I could see that him making that line look a lot better. And I think that end of the second is where my target is going to be for Fournette.
Cool. Something that we had down in the notes was how his teammate Darius Geese, however, sorry if I botched his name, you kind of thought he looked almost better at times than Fournette did behind that same line. Is that a red flag for him? Does that mean something that's a player that you're loving when he ends up coming out later?
Yeah, definitely. One thing you got to look at, though, is his 2016 was an injury-riddled season. He was playing one game, sitting out the next, and that could play a role. And I think the production was based on yards per carry. So that guy was just coming in, running up the middle for 5 yards and calling it a day, whereas Leonard Fournette is a game breaker. So he's anywhere in the field he could take it to the house because he has the size-speed combination. I keep going back and forth on Leonard Fournette. I'm just going to stop now.
Well, the one thing I'll say, and I'll let Waz close him out, that stiff arm that he's got looks painful. There's a number of plays that he had in his career at LSU where it's like, God damn, is that MMA? He just flat out just dusted that guy. Painful, just like slamming it's like he was running and just slamming the guy down. He's like Bam Bam from the Flintstones. Pretty much a beast of a man. You can see that he's just, if that can translate into the NFL, guys in that secondary aren't going to want to tackle him, and it looks painful. And it's kind of very similar in that comp that you gave from the NFL Combine, Bo Jackson. That was the same way. When that guy got running around that end, these dudes, the cornerbacks and safeties, maybe the safeties a little less, they're like, I want nothing to do with this guy. Waz, let's close this guy out, and we'll move on to this little white guy.
No, absolutely. Darius Geis is also a monster. This could be. I cannot wait to watch him in the NFL. It's gonna be fun. So I think we're all on board. We all like Leonard Fournette. We're all okay, kind of possessing him and drafting him in the leagues. But I think everyone else needs, and ourselves included, need to brace ourselves for that not Ezekiel Elliott 2016 season. We have to actually expect a much less season because everything's different. You have two solid runners. If anything, Leonard Fournette is a better running back than Ezekiel Elliott. But this situation matters so much. You're talking about Dallas versus Jacksonville. You know what I mean? So let's have hope, but brace ourselves for, mediocrity.
Well put. Well put. All right, well, let's move on to the next pick. 4 picks later in the first round, Christian McCaffrey out of Stanford, obviously all-world college career, and had a better career in college than Fournette did. In all honesty, he had the best all-purpose yards season in the history of NCAA football, kind of by a large margin. His all-purpose yards was in one season is 3,864 yards. Think about that. That is unbelievable. That beat the best before that was Barry Sanders, and he beat that record, Barry Sanders' record, by 614 yards. So not only did he beat a record that was out there for a while, he shattered it by another 614 yards. And Barry Sanders, pretty good player. So you got to be liking what he can do in an all-around game, and just his skill set is as amazing as it is. And I'm a big fan of this guy. He's just I liked Easy Ed, his father, growing up, but just love seeing what this guy can do. And the one thing that I'll say that when I watch him, and he's another guy like Fournette that you got to see a lot, is on a lot of national games, is his fluidity. Just the fact that it looks so effortless when this guy's playing. It almost feels, that when the best player on the field, you're almost like, how is it so open? How did he make these? And he's just that good. Kind of a player comp that I like to use that's a totally different position. But Martavis Bryant, when he's playing, he's so fluid. I've said before on the previous Pyro podcast, he looks like he's surfing. He looks like he's like everything, every move just looks so natural, and it just doesn't slow him down. Everything is just this beautifully fluid motion with Martavis Bryant. And totally different position, totally different body with Christian McCaffrey, obviously. But I feel the same way. I almost feel like he's like a roller coaster. He's on rails. And just the moves that he makes, just like speeding around a corner, everything looks effortless. Doesn't even look like he's exerting energy. His running style, he's pulling away from guys when he gets into the second zone, and it's just pretty special. And I just hope he plays against some serious talent there in Stanford. So it's not like he was like a D2 or some guy that was playing against a bunch of slop tarts. But I hope that this the way that he looked like on a different level at college can translate into the NFL. And I don't think it's going to happen overnight. They got to really figure out how to use them. They got to figure out how to have Cam and him gel together. They've got new weapons there, and they've still got Stewart. So, temper your expectations maybe, but he's just so good, and I hope that they can really figure out a way to make him maximize his talents right out of the gate.
No, he absolutely looks amazing. I think everything you say about him is exactly what the media and all of our peers are saying as well. You brought up another position in order to comp him to someone. I had a hard time comping Christian McCaffrey because I see a lot of James White in him, but I almost feel like it's almost disrespectful to do that, even though I love James White as a running back. But Christian McCaffrey, I don't love the landing spot as much. I know it seemed apparent that he was going to go to Carolina from the start, but the fact that they also drafted Curtis Samuel, we get a pass-catching running back extraordinaire. He goes to a team and a quarterback that's not known for throwing dumb passes and the sort. Carolina's top running back for targets last year was Fozzie Whitaker, and they were number 40 in targets, who was number 40 in targets among all running backs last year. So you're putting Christian McCaffrey in a situation that Carolina and Cam Newton aren't familiar with. I'm kind of curious what they're going to do with that. And not to mention that Jonathan Stewart's still around there. He's going to be there still getting carries. And Cam Newton's is still there, and he's a thief of those 5-and-out for a touchdown kind of rush plays in the red zone and right there near the goal line. I think it's a terrible fantasy situation for Christian McCaffrey, but when you got that kind of talent, a lot of people are just going to want him because he does look amazing, but we need to put it into consideration how Cam Newton runs that offense and how Carolina, plays the football, and they don't do a lot of those passes that Christian McCaffrey would benefit from and what he benefited from in Stanford.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the big question is how is he and Cam Newton going to fit together? Because Cam Newton, in my opinion, he's a selfish quarterback. He's the guy he's like the Russell Westbrook of the NFL. He's the guy that will get the highlight before making the smart play. So, when they're down there, is Cam going to say, let me just dump it off to McCaffrey and he can get an easy first down? Or is Cam going to say, I'm taking this myself? Like, I want those stats. I want to get paid. That's the big question for me. But on the flip side, I think McCaffrey is in Dynasty. I think he's the number one player in this draft class just because he is a running back, and that is a more valuable position, but he's going to be a pass catching running back. So you can project him out to more like 5 years rather than the 3 years you can get from Leonard Fournette with just heavy running style. So, I mean, I think he's going to have a really great career, but it might take a year or two for him to gel with Cam, where Cam's going to say, okay, let me give this guy the ball and let him work rather than me taking it into the house myself.
I hope you're right, but I think one thing I do think, I think Cam's a smart enough player that was a real shitbox season they had last year, going from the Super Bowl just down and spelunking into the depths of offensively. And I think that he realizes he can't do it on his own. And they got him some weaponry there in McCaffrey and Samuels. And that's kind of the complaint we always had, that, he didn't really have any really explosive kind of guys with him. So he can kind of turn that corner as a quasi-selfish player. I'm feeling like he can. So I really hope that happens. One thing I'll say also about McCaffrey is everyone always talks about his pass catching, but he had 2,000 yards in 2015 rushing. He can run. He's a guy. There was a stat that I saw on Twitter that had talking about how players that are going against 8 men in the box. He had that 8 man in the box against him on run plays more than 50% of the time. And he was still able to get like 5.86 yards rushing. Fournette had 8 people in the box all the time as well. He was able to get 5.4. So with 8 man in the box, he's still able to get a good yard per carry, which I think is impressive. And again, he had 2,000 yards in college. There's only like 30 players in the history of NCAA that have gone over the 2,000-yard mark. And those are guys like LaDainian Tomlinson, Marcus Allen, Melvin Gordon, Barry Sanders, Ron Dane, Larry Johnson. These are like big – Ray Rice did it. Tevin Coleman did it. These are guys that the list here of players that have gone 2,000 yards in a college season translate to guys that from Tony Dorsett, Mike Rozier. I mean, these are guys that like at least had somewhat of an impact at the NFL level. So the reason why I love McCaffrey is because he actually can run. We'll just see if he's got the body. He's a total puss. He only did 10 reps in the bench press, so he's not a strong guy. When you compare what he did at the combine this year to, Samaje had 30 reps in the bench press. So who knows, if there's just going to be too much strength and speed for him to be the same kind of effective runner that he was at Stanford. But I'm going to put my bet on him. He's a hard worker, and I think he can do it. I think my player comp also for him is a guy like Eric Metcalf from back in the late 80s, 90s. He could be – that was a little more of a gimmicky type guy, but another guy that Pro Football Focus had that I kind of liked was Marshall Faulk. Not as big and not as strong – and maybe not big is the wrong word, but not as strong as Marshall was, but might be a little bit faster, not as elusive. But hopefully he can turn into that kind of player. And but I'm like you. In Dynasty, I think he's the number one.
Well, he's not my dynasty running back one. I mean, I think Leonard Fournette's still going to be that guy for me just because I think he's going to have the longest career, even if it is a slow start there in Jacksonville. Here's one thing that Christian McCaffrey does have, though, that a lot of people do notice, but I'm not sure that they're taking it into account when they're kind of putting McCaffrey down in his connection with Cam Newton and how he's going to work there with that offense. He's got such a crazy media push. It's ridiculous. It's like, this is the media's guy right now is Christian McCaffrey. They're going to get McCaffrey on the field one way or another. If things start not looking so well for the Panthers and they start losing games, the media's going to have pitchforks and torches out for the offensive coordinator there in David Shula and Ron Rivera. And they're going to ask about him all the time, be like, hey, so what about Fournette? What about Fournette? You know, why aren't we getting Fournette McCaffrey more carries? What about McCaffrey? And I think that's the media does matter to the NFL and some of these owners. The owners are going to be like, hey, all the people want this player that we have. And then the owners can be like, why don't you guys play him? You know, the owners don't always understand the game and why certain players are on the field and why some aren't. So, but at the same time, this is hyping McCaffrey to crazy boundaries right now. And I don't think that Christian McCaffrey is going to live up to that hype. He needs that media push. He needs to be like forced into that role. He's got all the talent in the world, but at the same time, I don't like the situation there in him, Carolina. I wish he would have went so many other places, but it seemed apparent from the start that if McCaffrey's there for the Panthers in the draft, he's gone. So I don't know. I think he's going to be fine. I think he's going to get, to start 5 to 10 carries a game. He might get 5+ targets a game in the passing game. He could line up as wide receiver some, but someone like Curtis Samuel, I still think is going to limit his upside one way or another. Same thing with Cam Newton. I think he's going to be a top 12 PPR back. I do like him in Dynasty a lot. I'm hesitant that the hype is going to be too high and his price is going to be too much in order to get a positive return on investment. So I'm usually kind of letting it pass by and kind of letting everyone else take the risk and taking him top 3, top 4, and I'm hoping for some more value later on. But I love the guy. I just hate his situation right now.
I mean, he's our one chance as white people to have a strong NFL player, a strong NFL running back, rather. So, I mean, we're all rooting for him. But my question for you was, after that, is do you think he's going to have that effect to the extent of a Tebow, where the media is always covering him and he kind of becomes bigger than the team to the point where it's a negative impact?
I don't think anyone's ever going to meet the Tebow media hype. The thing about, I think it's going to get a crazy amount of hype, but I think it's also going to be limited to the Cam Newton hype. You know what I mean? So I think it's going to cap out somewhere. He's got a little bit of a media floor, but that ceiling is occupied by Cam Newton and just kind of the organization itself. So I don't think they're both going to be able to steal the spotlight together. You might even get like fake storylines against Cam Newton and Christian McCaffrey, who's holding who back, so-and-so. I don't know. I can see this all happening because when a team starts losing football games, you look for the scapegoat, and the media's got 2 names on their docket there. So it's going to be about one or the other.
But let's not forget about Olsen. Let's not forget about Kuechly. They've got a foundation there that I think no. The answer is no. I think that's a great question, Heartbeat, but I don't think it's going to be this evangelical just love for this guy like Tebow always got. So is there going to be a big buzz around him? Yeah, and there already is, as Waz said. But I think it's a good thing. I think this team could use it. It kind of takes some of the pressure off of the Cam, whereas opposed to in previous years, it's all been on his shoulder. And we know that he's lived up. He's been a great NFL quarterback so far. But he needed some help. So I think this locker room is good. I think there's a lot of professionals there where it doesn't need to come in and be the savior. They were a great team 2 years ago, and they were a lot better than they played last year. So we'll see. But if he can get going and doing his thing, it's a good enough team around him that I don't think, unlike Fournette, who's in a worse situation, I don't think he has to kind of carry people on his back, so to speak. Anything else, you guys? So I got one thing I wanted to mention in the notes that we have here is he's got a lot of wear and tear. So you sit there and you look at how much he played, and he got all those yards 2 years ago, banged up here and there last year. But over the last 2 seasons, he's had 745 touches. That is some serious usage. Very, very high usage for a guy that's he's 5'11", 200 pounds. And as I said, he's not the strongest dude around. So that's hopefully this guy doesn't kind of slow early because he's being overused. What do you guys think?
One quick question I have for both of you is regarding Curtis Samuel. They seem like they're very similar players. Samuel was more of a wide receiver, but they're both kind of that H-back, split out wide receiver kind of guy in the slot. And so do you think Curtis Samuel will be playing the same position as McCaffrey? They'll be spelling each other? Or is Samuel going to kind of develop more into that Teddy role?
He's Ginn. He's definitely Ginn. They're going to split him out. He's going to be running a lot of long routes to open things up. I think he's definitely been drafted as a H-back city, but I think it's more of a wide receiver. They just thought he was just too athletic and too explosive, and I think they really did see a Ted Ginn-like kind of guy. And then also in special teams, I don't see McCaffrey, who was awesome at special teams at Stanford. I don't see them really relying on him too much in that part of the game. I think that would be a mistake. Throw Samuels back there, let him be the punt returner or kick returner. Maybe I'm wrong, but I do not think that they really are competing against each other at all. I think they're going to find a role for Samuels, and that guy's legit as hell too.
Yeah, I know we're going to get probably a little bit more into Curtis Samuel on the wide receiver show. But my first instincts when they both got drafted to the Panthers was these two are going to limit each other's upside. They are very similar in how they're used. I don't think that Samuel is going to be like in that backfield all the time, but I do believe he's going to be back there more often than we think. But at the same time, I don't think that he is going to limit McCaffrey's upside as much as McCaffrey's going to limit his. So I was higher on Samuel than I am, before the draft than I am now. I think McCaffrey's going to be fine there. I don't think they're going to use Samuel as much as as in that Ted Ginn role. I don't think he's going to be used as much or solely just as a kick returner. I think he is going to be used in that passing game in the backfield quite often. But at the same time, he's not going to be taking too much from McCaffrey. But it sucks for both of them. They both could have been superstars on another team, but instead they're stuck on the same team in a weird situation. But I love them both, man. I'm dynasty. I'm taking them both if the price is right, because they will be okay. I think things are going to work out for the both of them.
Yeah, and another thing I'll say is they took Jonathan Stewart in the first round a couple years back. They just paid him in the offseason, so he's still going to get his carries on the ground. So McCaffrey for the next 2 years is really capped on his upside. So I think he's going to be like a PPR number 15 to 18, standard number 23 to 26 range. With that being said, I did see a lot of Reggie Bush in Stanford. He's the type of guy that he can you're going up to wrap him up, and whoosh, he's 5 yards downfield, 5 yards to the left. He's just so elusive, and everybody saw him running over those bags. So crisp. He can really make a difference, and I could definitely see him just, taking over for games and taking over for 3 quarters, 2 quarters, and just them riding Stewart on the bench while McCaffrey's just out there working, moving them downfield.
Awesome. Hey, you guys got anything else you want to close out with him? Or are we all good? And we'll move on to Waz's favorite part of the show. We good? All right. We'll keep an eye on Christian, keep an eye on Fournette. It should be fun. Let's move on to the third running back taken in this year's draft, and that he slipped a little bit. Some people thought he'd be a first rounder heading into the draft, and he ended up going in the second round, 41st pick overall, out of Florida State to Minnesota. So Adrian Peterson, 10-year run there. They cut him. And then they signed Latavius Murray in the offseason for the replacement. They got McKinnon there. And then in the second round, they draft Dalvin Cook. Waz, do your thing, have some fun, and then me and the Heartbeat will pop in and give some other stuff.
All right, so I know I kind of opened up the show kind of throwing some shade. Now, I'm not the kind of person that's going to say that Dalvin Cook is a bad running back by any means, nor do I think he's just going to be a bust or whatnot. He did kind of go in another lousy situation there in Minnesota. But, when I watch Dalvin Cook, you see, a 4.49 runner who hit or something like that. He has his super fast feet. You give him some space, he's going to outrun all those linebackers and those defensive backs. He's a little bit more gifted than a 4.49 runner. Good instincts, picking through holes, decisive, hesitant. He dances when he's kind of in some trouble. He hits holes in goals. But, at the same time, I don't think he's going to be knocking people over and running past people at the NFL level. I'm not saying he's a great college running back. There's a lot of things I like about him. I just think he isn't a franchise changer. I think he's okay, and I think he's always going to be just an okay running back. So I think a lot of my discontent towards Cook was how high of a pedestal he was put on. Just before the draft, people are talking to him as the number one prospect, and I'm shaking my head like, what are you guys doing? Like, what am I missing? Some of these other prospects look so much better than him. I get it. In the passing game, he's solid. He's not special. He can slip out of the backfield and catch some routes out there on the side. He has decent hands, but he's not elite there. He's just a decent pass catcher. I think everything about Cook, he's just decent. I keep saying that a lot. I don't see anything super special about him. He does everything just okay enough. People are viewing him as the game changer and the franchise face running back there in Minnesota, and I just can't see it. People are talking about how he's already pushed McKinnon out, and that he's going to be pushing Murray out, and it's just going to be Dalvin Cook, 3 downs, 24/7. I just don't. I don't think he's going to be that guy. He still fumbles as well. I know we had issues with fumbling with some of our other running backs that we'll discuss, like Deonta Foreman. But let's see, he had 5 fumbles in 2016. He lost 4 of them. He had 12 fumbles over 3 years and lost 9 of those. That's a big thing in the NFL too. It's sure that's something you could probably fix, but that still shows an inconsistency with someone who people are labeling as the franchise guy in Minnesota. I do not think Dalvin Cook is a top 5 running back in this class, and people are taking him as, if it's not running back 2 or 3, it's sometimes I've even seen people consider him at 1. I know people, just for dynasty purposes, he's my number 1 dynasty running back. It's like, dude, you're crazy. But there's a huge, hype train for Dalvin Cook, and rightfully so. He played fucking badass, but his game performances, I got some college kind of information here. When he faced bigger competition outside the ACC, the numbers weren't off the charts at all. They're good, but they weren't like, wow, like all of our other running backs. In Oregon 2014, Houston bowl game 2015, he had good games. Ole Miss, Michigan, and 3 games of Florida, he averaged 103 rushing yards per game. That's down about 30% off his other starts, and 0.7 rushing touchdowns per game, which is about half of his normal pace. So when he's facing some stiffer competition, he's just playing okay. He's not like running for 130, 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. It's just kind of like just enough to get by. So, and I don't know. I will not draft any Dalvin Cook. He's always gone in the top 5. No, thank you. I don't even know if I wanted him in the top 8 just because of how much it's too crazy right now in Minnesota. As long as McKinnon and Murray are still around, is he going to get the passing work and the touchdown red zone carries often enough? I don't think so. And I'm kind of curious on how they're going to work him in, but he's not a game changer, and I'm passing.
Yeah, I don't think he gets more than 5 red zone carries. Latavius Murray is the guy in the red zone, and they paid him to come in. The Vikings have showed a very strong pattern of playing the guy who they pay more, not the guy who has more talent, too. So they're going to be playing Latavius, trying to get that money back from him. They showed that because nobody questions who's a better athlete between Jerick McKinnon and Matt Asiata, but they played Matt Asiata way too much, just way too much. But that being said, I mean, Cook has his fair share of problems. He, unlike Nixon, he wasn't actually charged of it, but he did punch a girl outside some bar one night, and the charges were eventually dropped, but he does have character concerns as well. And that seems to be a Florida State thing. We know how many times Jameis got in trouble and how it was kind of swept under the rug. So, I mean, maybe they just have a really strong football tradition of women not calling out the football players, but he does have character concerns that could keep him off the field. That being said, I kind of saw a player comp in him in a different sport, in basketball. I saw Dwayne Wade. He always gets nicked up, and he'll like pull up, he'll hold that hamstring. Specifically in a game versus Miami last year, he pulled up, grabbed the hamstring, came out for possession, then he came back and got 222 yards on the ground. So he's kind of that, like, he'll pull up, say he's injured, and then the defense kind of says, "Oh, he's hampered now. We don't have to pay attention to him," and then he's going to go off. But that being said, I mean, like we went over for Jake Butt, I said he's going to be one of those guys that if you look in Madden, he's going to be a 75 rated everything. That's kind of what Dalvin Cook is, a little bit he's a little bit more elusive and dynamic. He's not really great at anything. He's good at everything. And I think he's going to have a lot of trouble finding the field. The one upside I see is when he is on the field, Sam Bradford cannot throw more than 3 yards downfield. So he's going to be looking very strongly at Rudolph and Dalvin Cook just to check down. So I think he could get 50 catches. I don't think it's that likely, though.
Yeah, and I'm a little worried just with the way that there's a lot of players in that backfield right now. McKinnon's a good player. They went and they grabbed Murray. It's just not – and Zimmer, to me, doesn't feel like the kind of coach that is all of a sudden going to be handing off the ball to a rookie. I think that he's going to have an uphill battle getting that playing time, and I think that's the biggest reason for me on a redraft situation to stay clear of him. I just think it's a real crowded backfield back there.
Yeah, not to mention, his sluggish speed, agility kind of almost makes him seem like he's going to be used as a between the tackles guy. But, at the same time, that's not a good spot for him. He's not that grounder. He's not that ground and pounding kind of running back. I think if he shed, especially at 210 pounds, I think if he shed maybe 10 pounds, I read this, who was this? I think it was RC Fisher mentioned that he would work better in a Charles Sim type role at 10 pounds lighter. And I could see them using Dalvin Cook in that role a little bit more than a guy that's going to be pounding the ball up the middle. But as you mentioned, D-Rex, it's easy to avoid him this year because you're paying an elite running back price for Dalvin Cook. Probably after you get the Fournette and McCaffrey, people are looking at Dalvin Cook. A little bit later, but you're going to be receiving just an okay and average running back in return. So it's too risky in season-long leagues. I think it's still too risky for the price in dynasty leagues. I want to see how Minnesota uses him, and I don't know. There's so many things I dislike about him. Just no, thank you. And it seems like we're all on board with that. So it doesn't seem like Pyro's on board with Dalvin Cook. I'm kind of curious if Stag Party is so.
I don't remember if he is or not, but it's funny. You say you want him to lose 10-ish pounds would be Jamal Charles, and then there's other pundits and other people that want to see the opposite. They want to see him beef up a bit and be a little bit more powerful and be able to. So I always get scared whenever you are before the player has even started in the NFL, when they're trying to change what that player is and how they're supposed to their body's supposed to be, the kind of player that they're supposed to be. It always scares the bejesus out of me because if you're already trying to change someone, then maybe they weren't meant for this in the first place. So it's funny. I think he probably will lose the weight and be a little more maybe a Tevin Coleman or, like you said, more of a Jamal Charles. But something also tells me that for him to get carries and maybe fill some of that Asiata role, he's going to think he needs to bulk up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't. Go ahead, Waz.
My bad. People to kind of want him to gain weight because they do view him just that speed that he has as, he needs to pound it up the middle. He needs to run between the tackles, and so they look at 210-pound guy. They're like, he should add some weight. But yeah, I was mentioning Charles Sims, not Jamal Charles. So you can kind of see that utilization. It probably makes more sense there if you kind of consider how Charles Sims and Doug Martin used to work there in Tampa Bay. So if he lost a little bit of pounds and kind of picked up a little bit of agility, it might be more helpful than trying to, bang up his body there right into the backs of his offensive linemen.
Yeah, one thing I saw with Cook is for this draft class, he is an above average in pass protection, so he will be able to stay on the field a little bit longer on those third downs. So, that's one thing. But my player comp for him, well, I'll go back. I think everybody thinks of Jamal Charles because Dalvin Cook called himself Jamal Charles. So everyone kind of has that association where they're like, is he like Jamal Charles? Fuck no. No, he's not.
I'm guilty. Guilty as charged.
Yeah, but to me, he's more of a Darren Sproles, a little bit taller Darren Sproles, where he has that kind of quick shift ability, but he's not an every down back. He's more of a 8 to 12 touch guy a game, and he could give you some good weeks, but he's not going to be an everyday starter.
I like the Pro Football Focus comp that they have, Fred Taylor. That feels pretty. He's got he looks like him in pads to me a little bit. I thought that one was good. Whether he can have that kind of career or not, but just looking at him on the field and the way he does things. The one thing I also just looking at some of the plays, he doesn't try and bounce it out all too often. He might not be strong enough to be at the NFL level in between the tackles carrier, but that's kind of where he had his pay dirt and made his hay at Florida State. So we'll see. He's kind of this he's like kind of counteracting himself on everything he is and what he should be. And again, like I said, that kind of always worries me. Just you're always trying to find yourself.
Yeah. So I do think that he's going to cut at least probably 5 pounds. He's going to be a quicker, less, bully kind of runner. If we're talking comps, and I think you guys will both like this based off of, who I heard you comp him to, a little bit of Bilal Powell, someone that's a little bit more physical than he is quick, maybe even shades and kind of considering maybe a Devonta Freeman just based on his style. But I mean, Freeman's a great runner. I can't compare Cook to him. But if we're talking someone like Bilal Powell, to where he's probably not an every down back who is more physical than he is kind of quick, I could see something like that. So that's kind of who I had some notes down on.
Cool. You guys got anything else? Hartbeat, you got anything else on Dalvin?
Yeah, I'm just going to say, like, where are you pulling the trigger on Dalvin Cook in just a redraft league? I kind of put him right. He's in that situation kind of like those Arizona wide receivers a couple years ago, where it's like it's kind of a take your pick. Like, which do you prefer? He's got kind of a more yardage upside, but Laxatives Murray's got that touchdown total. So you can see Laxatives getting about 8 touchdowns and Cook getting about 3, 4 maybe, but he's got the upside of 700-800 yards. So, I mean, I'm probably pulling the trigger around the 7th or 8th round, but what do you guys think, T-Rex?
Can I ask you, laxative? I needed more information on Laxatives Murray. I love this, but what I need a little more intel. I'm going to be running with this one and using it, so I'll footnote it when I can. But where is he? Is it because he's shit, or what is this?
No. So on the iPhone iOS autocorrect, if you type in Latavius, it autocorrects to Laxatives. So that's one of those things where you just kind of leave it. You text your friends like, how do you guys feel about Laxatives this year? And they're like, the fuck are you talking about, boy?
Nice. I love it. For me, I've actually got Dalvin Cook pretty low. I've got him in my 5th tier for running backs, and that is sitting at 31 overall. So I've actually got him 1 behind Joe Mixon and 1 ahead of your comp, Waz, in Bilal Powell. All right, I think if that's everything we want to do, quickly I want to just give a little shout out to some other great resources in fantasy football. One of the things we try and do here at Pyromaniac is open the curtain a little bit, give you guys good other tools that you should use. We like you guys using us, and we know our stuff, but there's a lot of great minds out there in fantasy football community, and there's a handful of guys that really focus on the rookies, focus on the incoming draft, and watch a ton of college football and really have their finger on the pulse of what they've done in their college career, even high school in a lot of regards. And then when they've drafted, it really can help you out for their NFL career, for fantasy football, for dynasty, for all that good stuff. And some of the resources that I like, and if you guys want to throw out any after this, one of these resources is something you guys pointed out to me in the first place. But Matt Waldman, he does the rookie scouting portfolio, and he comes out with this like crazy show on the screen how thick it is when you print it out. Crazy like report on 175 different players, and he just goes ad nauseum, watches a ton of games, a lot of film. You can go to his site, mattwaldman.com, and he's got some pretty interesting videos. He's got a YouTube channel as well where he'll kind of just look at a handful of plays for a player that kind of, in his opinion, sum up where he could, how his career could work within a couple plays from college. And I think that's an interesting way to do it. You can kind of summarize and draw parallels from a small amount of plays for a player and how that could correlate over to NFL. So I like that guy. One thing, Matt Waldman, if you're watching, I tried to buy your scouting portfolio, and your login is screwed up right now. You got to come up with an easier process. You got to log into this thing, then buy it. just get a Shopify site. You're killing yourself on your sales. But Waldman's a great guy. He's been on the Pyro Podcast Light with Pyromaniac Mo a number of times. I think he's been on 3 or 4 times with him. So thank you for that. But Waldman, I like him. He's got it. He knows his rookie stuff. Another resource out there is the Devi Report, and that's by Nick Whalen. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but you've done you've done a little bit of work with Nick and a little bit of help, or your buddies with him in some regard. Tell us a little bit, if you don't mind, about his rookie kind of prospectus.
Yeah, I don't want to take any credit for helping Nick. Nick puts in, I mean, I think he lost months in his every year. He just kind of subtracts months and just devotes it entirely to the Devi Report. I don't think he eats some nights, you know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, I did a little bit like a copy edit work, but he writes so many words. He watches so much film, hours and hours, and he kind of comes up with his, what he sees with these players. I mean, he hit on Corey Davis before it was popular. Not hit on, but he was pretty much telling everyone, hey guys, pay attention to this Corey Davis. So 3 years ago, in Devi leagues where we draft college players before they get actually drafted to the NFL, he helped out a lot of people there. Nick kind of watches several games on each player. We're talking about just the offensive quarterback, wide receiver, running backs, tight ends. But it's mostly wide receivers and running backs. He tells us what he sees with them. He kind of projects, how he could be utilized, what his strengths are, what the weaknesses are, in a very scout-worthy way. You know what I mean? It's not just basic stuff that you're just going to read an article about. It's very specific. This is how, one cut. You see a lot of different kind of jumps. I learned so much just reading Nick's stuff. So it's very awesome. And at $10 this year, you're doing yourself a service. You're even preparing yourself to hear about rookies that you're going to hear about in 2 to 3 years. So he's watching high school film to get the oncoming freshmen. He's a step ahead of so many people. So highly recommend Nick Whalen's Devi Report. I think it's thedevireport.net. And I believe it was Scott Fish that kind of helped him redo his site and how he purchased or how he sells his Devi Report. So it's really easy. You kind of click in there, make a payment, you're going to get a PDF ready.
And just so for you guys out there that aren't as crazy and hardcore on all these subtypes of league formats like a Waz, Devi leagues is like development players where you're drafting them super early and you can store them away on your bench. And like you said, that's something that I believe, didn't Scott Fish invent that? Kind of was one of the first guys ever to be doing leagues a long time ago in that format. So it's cool. Thank you. The third one I'll do, and then let's move on to our next player, Joe Mixon. But the third one is the Orange Report, and that's by the FF Ghost. I think his Twitter handle is at FF Ghost. You can also email him at ffghost@gmail.com. But he's got another report that's solid on the rookies. I think I'm going to pick that one up today. I think we were talking before Hartbeat jumped on the show today, and I think that's the one I'm going to buy this year. So I'm going to check that one out. So use those other resources. Find other ones of your own. If you ever have any questions about this, you can reach out to us or Waz is a great resource out there on Twitter. Twitter handle for Waz is at WAZNFL. Our Twitter handle is at Pyromaniac, but it's got a 1 instead of an I, so it's at PYROMAN, the number 1 AC. And then you've got Hartbeat's Twitter handle is at Pyro Hartbeat, and Hartbeat spelled HARTBEAT. So check us out on Twitter, follow us there, hook it up. Let's move on to the next guy, and that is Joe Hits Womenson.
Hey, let me jump in real quick. Let me turn it back. You were talking about these different variants of leagues. A lot of people are starting to get themselves into some IDP leagues. And what FF Ghost does really well in the Orange Report is he does hit on these IDPs. And I think he puts in a very, very palatable format to where it's not overwhelming. And it has nice fancy charts and kind of those spider charts that people are starting to love nowadays. So that is the one benefit of the Orange Report is it includes a lot of IDP.
And very visual. And that's the reason when you were telling me about a style, I'm a visual guy. I don't read through hundreds of pages of fantasy. I'm like Donald Trump. You got to give it to me in short, sweet bits in the paragraph. You got to tell me how awesome I am. D-Rex, you will love this guy. All right, that's my Trump. That's my Trump moment of the show. Let's go on. Joe lies. Lands in the Bengals, second round pick. People didn't know whether he's obviously first round talent. You had a lot of people that didn't want to see him go this high and wanted him to be kind of penalized. But 48th overall out of Oklahoma and goes to the Bengals. I'll let one of you guys dive in and talk this guy up or talk him down. What's going to happen in fantasy football with this fella?
You know, we were talking about earlier. I think Joe Mixon is probably going to be the most Ezekiel Elliott like in 2017. You know, but consider how valuable Elliott would have been on the Bengals with their degenerating offensive line last year. Mixon has a similar skill set. He's a solid B+ talent given his size and speed, but he walks into an entirely different situation. No Dak Prescott, who I'm really high on. No all-pro offensive line. He's got a crumbling offensive line, a team that can't score in the red zone. But, if you knew that from day one he would be the starter, you got to love the hell out of Mixon. But Jeremy Hill's going to be there still. He's still going to be getting carries. Giovanni Bernard is still there, and he's going to be still involved in the passing game. I know Stag Party, I think he threw out on Twitter his projections for the Bengals offense, and a lot of people will be surprised because everyone wants Joe Mixon to be the guy, but Stag Party truly believes, and I'm on board with it, that Jeremy Hill is still going to be a factor in that running game, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, I mean, as for the landing spot, can you think of anything in the world that's worse than Joe Mixon going out to clubs with Adam Pac-Man Jones? That is, the Bengals are the one franchise that I did not want to see Mixon go to, because he'd be there for 1 week and then he could be arrested for manslaughter. I mean, like, with all those character concerns, that's the one place I didn't want to see Mixon go. That being said, Mixon is my favorite rookie on the field this year. I think he has, like Ezekiel Elliott, what was brought up, he does have all those tangibles. He doesn't have the pass blocking, though. He only stayed in on shotgun plays. He only stayed in on 20% of those plays to pass block, so he doesn't have that yet. And dealing with Jeremy Hill is going to get his touches. Everyone hates Jeremy Hill. No one can count on him. But Gio's coming off that ACL surgery. If he doesn't get back into it in training camp, I feel like Joe Mixon could cement himself into that pass-catching role and take some of Jeremy Hill's rushes. I mean, one thing to point out, Joe Mixon, every 3.9 touches, he forced a defender to miss. So he's elusive as fuck. I saw the game tape that I watched. He's just an amazing player. I see so much Jamal Charles in him. And I think if he can stay on the field, if he can kind of live that low life, like stay out of the media, do whatever you want, just don't smoke weed with Le'Veon Bell, I think he's going to be a great player for years to come.
No, absolutely. I don't know. A lot of the games, a lot of Joe Mixon's big games that he also had came against the terrible Big 12 defenses, those run and gun kind of offenses. Joe Mixon was having his 100-yard plus rush games against, guys like teams like Baylor, West Virginia, and Texas Tech. Now, when he faced stiffer competition and some of those more balanced, bigger schools, he wasn't as great. Like he didn't look great, as everyone's projecting him to be, and how everyone kind of keeps him on this pedestal against teams like Texas or Tennessee or Ohio State, Auburn, Clemson. Those kind of games were a little bit of more of just an okay games or some negatives. So he had 700-yard rushing games against Texas Tech twice, West Virginia, Baylor, Louisiana Monroe, TCU, and Oklahoma State. Now, TCU and Oklahoma State, you can have a little bit more respect for, but neither of those were in the top 70 of run defense last season. So Joe Mixon feasted on bad defenses, I think, and that's kind of what padded his numbers a little bit more. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more of one of his running back counterparts later, who I am more of a fan on based on his price as well.
Cool. What do you guys think is this guy's comp? He's a little taller than you would think. He's definitely he's not a short dude. So what do you guys think? He's 6'1". Wow. That makes him pretty much tied for the tallest guy that we're going to talk about today. And as we know, a lot of these running backs these days are much more in that 5'10", 5'11" zone. What do you guys think is his comp at the NFL level?
Yeah, so I brought up Jamal Charles. I think he just shows flashes of Jamal Charles. He's not going to be a full-time Jamal Charles. Jamal Charles is a beast. He's a once-in-a-generational talent. But one thing I do think, PFF had a really good player comp with Matt Forte. I think he's one of those guys that can catch the ball out of the backfield. He can get it. He can work the goal line. They had Perrine work it mostly, but he has the ability to, just like we saw Ezekiel Elliott do. And he's a guy that can get you 800 yards and 6 touchdowns right off the bat his rookie year.
Cool. Well, I kind of agree. Stags and me and Waz are all on board that Jeremy Hill's still a good player. They're not going to throw him out. I think the opportunity comes because Gio's coming off an injury. But we'll see. I think this offense is going to be improved. We know that people think the offensive line is the issue, but there's a lot of talent there at the receiver, and hopefully Eifert can get back pretty soon. Now you got Ross, who's taking the field, opening the field up for everyone a little bit. So Mixon should be interesting. I think the one thing that I've read about and heard other people say, and I kind of agree with it, there's so much hate going on with the fans, and there's going to be people outside the stadium protesting and against this pick, and just the buzz with that I don't think you're going to have that happen and not just put them on the field. It's kind of a put up or shut up. The way you can shut these people up that are saying, hey, this guy's a thug, this guy's an asshole. Why we don't like this kind of representation for our team, and the fan base is going to have their panties in a little bit of a bunch about it. I think you just got to give him the ball, let his football do the talking and on the field. And you just hope that kind of over time people kind of forget about it because he's scoring touchdowns and he's taking the team to a better place.
Yeah, and not to mention, you were talking about they're just going to have to throw him on the field. A couple weeks ago, I brought up on the Dynasty Playbook that, Marvin Lewis has kind of been being scrutinized and watched ever since Cincinnati has been kind of like going off the cliff. It doesn't seem like they can ever get that push past the first round of the playoffs. Ever since Jay Gruden and Mike Zimmer left, it seems like Marvin Lewis is going to use any lifeline that he can get, and that's going to it's probably going to come down to him, using his shiny new toy and Joe Mixon. He should get a push right away because he's going to try to use him. It may not be the full push right away, but they're going to continue to push him, like you said, and have him prove himself and kind of earn that job. So the fact that Cincinnati's been on a little bit of a decline kind of gives me an okay thought that Joe Mixon will be used sooner and probably with more volume, starting at like day one and even more so later into the season.
Yeah, I haven't looked into how the money's working out there between those three backs, but I just get the feeling that one of them's got to go before the season for us to really buy in on either one of them, or else it's going to be like even last year. It was when they were both healthy. Is it a Jeremy Hill game or a Gio Bernard game? And you never really knew. So I think for us to get real clarity on Joe Mixon, they gotta ship one of those guys out, and then we'll know that they're really buying in on Mixon.
Cool. You guys got anything else on this guy and what he could do this year for the team? We got more?
Nope.
I mean, he has the upside to be one of the best running backs in football, but can he get on the field? Can he stay on the field? And can he stay out of trouble? Those are the big outliers.
Do you think he's when it comes to Dynasty and him, is he someone that you like ahead of any of the guys we've spoken before? Are you high on a first round Dynasty pick with Mixon, or not as much?
I mean, I'd definitely put him ahead of Cook. We just don't like Cook here, but I'd say you got to look at some of those wide receivers before you go look at Mixon, though. So he's behind the Leonard Fournette, the McCaffrey. I'd say he's behind Corey Davis, and it's going to be a real toss up between. Do you want to go running back Mixon, or do you want to go Williams at receiver?
Yeah, you're going to only have one of them. If we're just talking about running backs, he's absolutely below Fournette. He's absolutely way, way above Delvin Cook. He is going to be behind, I think. Yeah, I think it's closer to Christian McCaffrey, but someone later that I'm going to talk up Samaje Perine because I actually like Perine more than Mixon as well, just based off of, what you're going to get probably a little sooner than later in Perine than Joe Mixon. So he's probably about my RB4 or 5, which is already too low. So he's going to be gone by then usually. I did get a share of him in an auction league, but that's about it.
Yeah, it looks like we might have lost D-Rex for a little bit, but I think that's all we have from me. That's all we have from you two. So let's move on to Alvin Kamara, who got drafted by the Saints in round 3, coming out of Tennessee. He's more of that pass catching back, but what do you think about him, Waz?
I don't like him as much as it seems like the most of people, but it seems like the public loves these kind of tweener guys who just look electric on the field because they want them to be the same kind of player at the NFL level. He's got that tweener size at 214 pounds, below average speed for that kind of running back at 4.56. And the majority of his passes were swing passes and a lot of screen passes. So, I mean, the same thing that we got like a Kenneth Dixon or a Wendell Smallwood, guys that people want to be good, but they always get a little bit too hyped. But then when kind of push comes to shove and these guys are kind of on the back burner, you know what I mean? He rushed for 70 or less yards in 19 of his 24 career games. And his top 5 rushing efforts came against Bowling Green State, North Texas, Kentucky, Texas A&M, and Vanderbilt. So aside from A&M, he it's not like he was tearing up against some crazy defenses. You know what I mean? So and against some bigger games like Georgia, Alabama, Nebraska, he only averaged 38 yards rushing. I'm like, I mean, he's gonna be using the passing game, but he's not gonna be that playmaker, that game changer that people want him to be, especially. And I know his draft capital, round 3 running back makes him probably look a little better than he is. But I think it's just the Saints trying to reach for their, that Darren Sproles guy.
Yeah, but I mean, this is the ideal landing spot for a pass catching running back. The Saints, Sean Payton loves to dump it off to those running backs. Drew Brees loves to dump it off. So, I mean, that's the perfect place for him. At Tennessee, he did move around the field a lot. So, I mean, he does have the experience in splitting out and being able to make those quick turns and catches. But, I mean, I don't think he has that much of an upside with Mark Ingram already there, who is a good pass catcher. With Adrian Peterson coming in, getting a decent sized deal, they're really going to want to get him some usage. He has an incentive in his deal for if he gets over 100 or 1,500 yards. That's an incentive. So, I mean, do you really think Kamara can come on with Ingram getting the bulk of the carries and Adrian Peterson working towards that high rushing total? How much are they actually going to use him?
That sucked. I closed the window. Sorry about that, guys. That was a real shit job. An ad started playing on one of the pages I was looking, and all of a sudden I tried to close it quickly, and it closed Chrome. I'm back. All right. Sorry. That was scary. Thank God you guys were able to continue going. Sorry about that.
Yeah, we just finished Marlon Mack. We're pretty much good to wrap it up now. No, I'm just kidding. So, yeah, Heartbeat. He did kind of play backup mostly to Jalen Hurd as well. I kind of hate everything that happened with Jalen Hurd because he was awesome to watch, but it actually gave us a reason to pay attention to Kamara. Who knows? It's, similar to what I said about Marvin Lewis there in Cincinnati. Sean Payton's he could be on the hot seat, and he's going to want to use his, quote unquote, shiny new toy as well. It seems like they have this desire to, get that Darren Sproles role kind of player. So is Alvin Kamara that guy? I don't think he can be, but they might use him as such. I think he comps very well to someone like Devontae Booker, though. So I don't know. I don't think he's that special. I think people are expecting perfect situation and scenario for Kamara. They think because it's New Orleans and that the Saints are going to try to fill that Sproles role. They see that kind of ceiling, which I don't, because they had all this time to fill that Darren Sproles role and they didn't. They tried to do it with Pierre Thomas for a little bit, but it's crowded there now with Ingram, and then you have Adrian Peterson. So year one, I'm off. Dynasty, I'm probably off as well because of his price.
Yeah, my big question with him is: are they going to be able to use him in the slot? Because they just lost Brandon Cooks, they sent him to the Patriots. They wanted to reload on defense. So if he does get some work in the slot, I think he could have some value. But he has a low floor, he has a low ceiling, in my opinion. Despite the fact that New Orleans consistently does have the best PPR running back group in the league. I still think there's way too much competition in that backfield for him to get a significant workload.
At least for 2 years.